The India-Russia equation is an interesting one. The two nations have enjoyed a strategic and close relationship based on mutual interest and realpolitik. Let's do a SWOT analysis of India's ties with Russia. It's a relationship that has survived the test of time. There are 6 major components on which it hinges: defense, politics, trade, counter-terrorism, terror cooperation, civil nuclear energy and space. Despite India having branched out and diversified in its defense acquisitions, Russia still remains India's chief supplier of military hardware. About 68% of all defense imports to India are from Russia. The defense partnership is not just about India importing Russian equipment. The two nations have actively collaborated in research and development of some cutting-edge military technologies, like in the case of the supersonic BrahMos cruise missiles. India has also signed a deal to purchase the S-400 missile defense system, despite the US offering its THAAD and Patriot missile defense systems to India. But that doesn't mean that all is smooth sailing. India pulled out of the joint ventures to develop the 5th-generation fighter aircraft, the Sukhoi Su-57. Despite the project having been announced in 2007, India opted out of the joint venture in 2018, citing the excruciatingly long delays and mounting costs. The Ilyushin IL-276 met the same fate after having been announced in 2009. Russia's share in supplying military hardware is decreasing, while the contribution from other countries has risen. The US supplies 14% and Israel just about 7% of India's defense equipment. But defense is only one part of the India-Russia story. On the political front, the two nations have consistently backed each other at international forums. For instance, it was Russia which backed India's entry into the Shanghai Cooperation Organization, the SCO, the summit that's on right now. Russia has also strongly backed India in its quest for a permanent seat at the United Nations Security Council, for the granting of membership into the NSG and APEC for India, while Russia has also expressed interest to join SAARC as an observer. Vladimir Putin hosted Prime Minister Modi in Sochi last year. It was the first ever informal summit between the two countries. On the cultural front, the Soviet Union and India got off to a brilliant start. Several generations of Russians grew up watching the films of Raj Kapoor and others. But after the collapse of the Soviet Union, the market for Indian films in Russia has dramatically shrunk. In fact, Russia has just about 14,000 Indian expats living at the moment, while the number of Russian expats in India is equally low. Contrast this with the United States, where even according to conservative estimates, about 2.9 million Indian expats reside. Culturally, the people-to-people contact between Russia and India has reduced to a trickle. Despite India and Russia having been close and strategic partners over the years, the relationship has been as much about missed opportunities as about fruitful cooperation. Joining us, Rajiv Sikri, former secretary with the Ministry of External Affairs, someone who has a wide experience of Russia and has served twice in Moscow. Mr. Sikri, thanks very much for being with us this evening. This relationship, the India-Russia relationship over the past few years has been described as a relationship that is adrift. Do you believe under the leadership of Prime Minister Modi and President Putin, it is finally finding its moorings?
I think that the relationship has strong roots, but it requires a constant nurturing, and frequent meetings ensure that if there are any misunderstandings that arise, that these are removed very quickly. I think this is what the Modi-Putin frequent meetings have managed to do. It's not that we agree on everything as far as with Russia, but on the strategic level, we are on the same page. As you yourself pointed out, we are heavily dependent on Russia for military equipment and technologies. And Russia is offering us the kind of technologies like a nuclear submarine or an aircraft carrier or now this S-400 or the BrahMos joint developed missile, which no other country is willing to offer. So that speaks for a level of trust and has deep roots. But it is important to bear in mind that the relationship between our two countries today is quite different from what it was in Soviet times. I think Russia has changed, India has changed, and we need to be respectful of each other's interests and see where the common ground is. I think the changing geopolitical environment requires both India and Russia to diversify their relationships. But the leaders very maturely and consciously realize that there is great benefit in keeping the solid India-Russia relationship intact. This is never going to be easy because the base of the relationship is somewhat narrow. It's basically defense, energy, and technology. The people-to-people aspects are a bit weak. The economic hasn't really taken off. So I think the two countries have decided that we must focus on these so that there's a broad-based relationship that extends across all sections of society and that there are stakeholders in both countries for a strong relationship among all sections of society, all political classes, and not just in Moscow and St. Petersburg or Delhi and Mumbai and Bangalore, but across the countries. This is where the challenge is, and I feel that when both leaders are committed to ensuring that the relationship remains strong,
right,
it will remain intact and will continue to flourish.